My name is Rebecca Lowrey. I'm the producing director for MusicalWriters.com. How many of you are Academy members? If you're Academy members, raise your hands. Yay, we've got a lot. And then we've opened up for our guests as well, because we want you to learn all about the Academy Reading Series, our pitch nights, and answer as many questions from you as well. Feel free this whole time to drop questions in the chat. If we're talking about that subject, I'll kind of pepper them in. Otherwise, we'll get to them at the end, and we'll have opportunity to ask questions live as well. But as we're going along, if you want to drop them in the chat, please do that for us. Just so that we kind of minimize our noise, if you'll mute your mic so that you can hear all of us clearly. And then just, again, drop questions in the chat as we go along. Oh, hi, Kyle. I see you in there. And Carol. Okay, let me introduce our wonderful panel for tonight. These are all folks who have done our Academy Reading Series, and we're going to talk about the process from pitch night to preparation for the reading to the actual reading and feedback, and then what they've done with the content afterwards. So just kind of everything from A to Z. We've got Brent Black here. He was actually our first Academy Reading Series that did the pitch night with his show Con. We've got Michael Kaplan with Foodies, and Sam Steere, who's also our community manager for the Academy with My Father's Dragon. I had the privilege to work with all of them on their shows and produce them and direct them here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas. Hi guys, how's it going?
Great.
Great.
Yeah, excited to be here.
So tell us all where y'all are zooming from. So Brent, where are you right now?
I am in Philadelphia, where I currently reside in my warehouse of production equipment.
Yes, that's awesome. Sam,
also my office. At? Yeah.
I'm in Springfield, Illinois, right in the middle of the Midwest.
Awesome. And Michael.
And pushing further west, I'm in Morro Bay, California.
Great.
And hey there to Gary and Melanie from California.
I know. Wow, we've got a good California showing. Today I am in Dallas, zooming from here, and I split my time between Dallas and Arkansas and New York. So I'm kind of everywhere as we go. Well, let's get started and talk about pitch night and preparing for pitch night. For those of you who might not know, this is something for Academy members. They have the opportunity to submit their show. We're doing about 3 or 4 of these a year. The new date is going to be coming out. So if you are on here, you probably are on our email list, and you'll see the new submission date coming up. It'll be here in the fall. So we do the pitch night. We pick 5 writers to pitch their shows. And then I get the joy of picking 1 to produce, sometimes 2, if it works out. So tell us about your pitch night preparation. Who would like to go first? Brent, tell us about your pitch night preparation.
So I really wanted to win and made it a little, I wouldn't say part-time job, but like whenever I had like a little break from my real day-to-day work stuff, I was like, okay, I'm going to just go and like practice as if I'm doing it for real. Just because if you do it over the course of, you know, a week or 2 or more, you start to hear it differently. It's actually not so different from developing your musical in a way. But I edited the video myself. I happen to be an editor, but I changed it over and over again. I even changed it like the day of. Yeah, you know, I my show's a comedy, and I tried to, and in my initial draft, I tried to like have comedy moments from the show that made it clear that it was funny, because show don't tell is good, but sometimes hard to contextualize things in a comedy. So I also tried to make the presentation itself have a vibe of the show. Right. So even if you don't get to really see every bit of the show, you get the energy of it from, well, ideally from me and the background music and stuff.
Right. Awesome. So you did a video and then you talked as well. And then obviously we have questions afterwards. Sam, tell me about how you prepped for yours.
Yeah, so for mine, I did not make it a full-time job, but I did think about it as in kind of preparing for an audition, and you're preparing a monologue and a song, and you're kind of go in with that mindset that everything's sort of set with a few options for making some creative decisions in the moment. So essentially, I knew that we had 5 minutes to pitch. I knew that I wanted to feature some music. It was torturous to cut down the not songs, not verses, individual phrases from songs that I wanted to include. That is a terrible thing to go with a knife to your songs and try and figure out what one makes sense by itself and two is expressive of the spirit of the show. And hopefully it's a halfway decent performance too. And so I knew I wanted to feature music, which meant I only had about 2.5 minutes to talk.
Right.
And so I literally just scripted it out for myself. I made a little voice memo that I would listen, and I practiced talking it out loud. And ultimately I got the point. I could do it all memorized. I had it on a note on my screen so I could reference if I completely blanked out. But then it was just a matter of taking that language and making it conversational and trying to make it as relaxed and relational as possible rather than me just reading a script.
Right, for sure. Michael, tell us about how you prepped for your pitch.
Well, I didn't have any video and I didn't have any storyboards. I had some demos and my big mouth. And so I basically decided that I was going to attempt to really capture what I thought the spirit of the show was, why I thought it was funny, why I thought it would be appealing to an audience, not get too deep in the weeds with the plot, but just really try and create a sense of the experience, and then weave in some snippets of the songs when it seemed appropriate. And for me, the one challenge was, because I wasn't going high tech, I did want to be able to bring in music and not make it sound like it was coming, out of a little tinny speaker, which is what happens if, you're on Zoom and you just normally play music out of your computer speaker. So I did find a good piece of software called Loopback Audio. That allowed me to create a double channel where I could talk and at the same volume play the music. And then it was just a question of my creating little MP3s and iTunes and, being my own stage manager and just cueing them at the right time. So that was pretty much my approach. I guess I didn't want to win as much as Brent.
No, I think Michael raises an important point that I noticed when I was making my pitch as well, is like not getting bogged down in the plot of your story. And I think this is so hard, is when you're talking about your show to someone who's never heard about it, you want to just explain the whole narrative. And one, there's not time. Two, it's boring to just sit there and listen to you list off what happens in the story. And I think it was really a struggle to simplify and really find like maybe 2 or 3 sentences that express the overall arc of the story, leave it at that, and then focus in on why this show now, like what is it that is attractive about this show in terms of cast size or who you can put in the cast, or a musical style that's unique, or something that sort of sets it apart or makes it memorable in people's minds. And I think that is maybe for folks who haven't done a pitch before, that was one of the counterintuitive things for me, is I really didn't talk about the story much at all.
I think like it really makes you think about questions that you should probably be thinking about anyway, but it really crystallizes them. Like, what are the questions your show asks, explores, and answers? And that can be as simple as, what if this kind of person put on a show about this thing? But like, if once you kind of look at those questions that come from your show, I think that is a great way to grow from there. And you could even, sometimes explaining your premise is just saying the central question of the show. Mrs. Doubtfire, what if a man dressed up as a woman because he couldn't otherwise see his kids? Like, okay, let's go there. That's a good starting place. And just knowing what your show is really about, and then packaging that in a way that is attractive and engaging.
Yeah, and
Well,
for the
definitely.
Rebecca, let me ask you a question real fast, because
Yeah.
you know, everybody talks about the elevator pitch, and we understand that's really trying to capture the experience, the show, the idea in a minute or two. Nobody does an elevator PowerPoint, but on pitch night, we are having more and more video presentations. Do you find that valuable on your end? Does it matter to you?
It doesn't. It doesn't matter to me. I've said from the very beginning that my favorite pitch would be a writer sitting at their piano, telling me about their show, and then just breaking into some of the songs as they go along. For me, the low tech versus high tech doesn't matter. I think the biggest pro to having a video is time management. Honestly, I think that is the biggest pro to time management. When we don't have that set video or PowerPoint or whatever, we can very quickly run out of time. It doesn't make a difference to me. I actually was training a new salesperson, and my definition of sales is it's just a transfer of enthusiasm. And so however you can quickly transfer your enthusiasm about your show, not only to me as the person who's listening to the pitch, but to our audience as well. And then really, I'm just trying to answer two questions. The first one is, do I want to do this show? I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's, do I want to do this show? Similar to like when we're flipping on Netflix, trying to figure out what I want to watch that night. Do I want to watch this show? Why? How do you pick? Normally, the do I want to do this show is because something caught my attention. I like the subject matter. I heard other people talking about it. That answers that for me. And then the second question that I'm trying to answer is, can I do this show? If your pitch is like, well, it's 200 people and it's starring 4 elephants, well, then no, probably I'm not going to be able to do that show. So that's, if you're trying to figure out what to spend your time on in 5 minutes, is allowing, your production team or whoever you're pitching to answer those two questions. Can I do this show? Do I want to do this show? That's what we're going for. But no, I am not overly impressed by videos and not impressed by folks who don't use videos. I think it's just it's a personal choice. As long as I can get the vibe of the show and get excited about it and know that it's a subject matter I'm interested in, or it's a unique telling of it, that's what I'm going for. All right. Okay. Any quick questions about pitch night? If you want to drop them in the thing, we're going to move on to our next thing here. So you did your pitch. Brent won. Michael was second place on the first one, and then Sam won his. Tell everybody here kind of what the next step was about how we got from, oh, I won pitch night, Rebecca's going to do my show, or what your thoughts process was and how we kind of got to seeing it on stage, that pre-production phase. Sam, you want to tell us about that?
Sure. So for me, obviously, when we had submitted to be part of the pitch night, we'd already submitted full script, full score. Yep. And to the question in the comments, yes, like it has to be a full piano vocal score for this particular thing. And so you had all the materials. One of the things that was on my mind was there was a specific song that I wanted to rewrite. I had gotten everything ready to be able to submit it, but there was this one song that was bugging me. And so I went, it was a little bit down the line, and our actual stage reading got pushed back a little bit. So I had a little bit of extra time because of the whole COVID surge. But I ended up rewriting that song, getting the PDF of music to Rebecca, and they were able to do the new version of the song because they hadn't started rehearsals yet. Wonderful.
Right.
Other than that, like Rebecca and I sat down and had a conversation. I don't even remember if it was on the phone or over Zoom, but we were talking about some of the casting requirements. My show had a unique thing in that I was intentionally having the narrator step in and play certain characters. And so there were some questions around just the logistics and the actors that she had available and how that was going to work for this particular reading. And I think, honestly, one of the things I was sort of surprised at was how hands-off it was, in the sense of like, I decided I wanted to rewrite a song. But if I hadn't decided that, I feel like there was that initial conversation where we talked through some of the logistics, particularly around casting. And then, you know, you told me about some of the actors you were excited about. And then we were sort of gearing up and, you know, making sure that we were sharing things so that people would come and whatnot. But really, because the script and score were there, as a writer, I could kind of relax and not be too obsessed with things. And, you know, I'm not in the room during rehearsals. It's not like I'm sitting there like fine tuning things. And I think there was a point there where I was just like, all right, it's out of my hands. Let's let her do her magic and see what happens. And that was kind of a fun, anything I've ever written that's been performed, I've been directly involved in. And so
Right.
this was a first for me of sort of handing it off, being like, all right, let's let other people bring their artistry to this. And that was a lot of fun, honestly.
Yeah. Michael, how was your pre-production from the, hey, I want to do your show, to, all right, show up on opening night?
Well, a lot of it was about getting the proper materials together, because no sooner was the pitch night over when you reached out and you said, would love to do the show at some point, but you need an actual piano vocal score, because the musician that I worked with on this project, Jeff Marr, he had made charts.
Yeah.
And so I turned to Jeff and said, look, we have an opportunity here. We got to get this together. And he worked hard. He worked fast. He did that conversion. And then, of course, we had to make a merged script. And I had never done that before. And you sent me some examples. And then I went into PDF purgatory for a while. But I was able to, like, you know, put that
Great
together.
name for it.
And then beyond that, in my day job, I'm a nonprofit fundraiser. So I'm like a professional nudge. And I just try and do that with a certain amount of grace and self-deprecating humor. And I just had to keep nudging Rebecca to make sure this was actually going to happen. Because it was a little, you know, because of the pandemic, it was a little iffy. So I would regularly reach out good-naturedly and just say, so what do you think? You think we're still going to do it? And fortunately, it remained on her radar. And once she had the merged script, and I'm seeing Noel's comment, it means that you're putting the dialogue scenes and the musical score together, so you don't have your performers flipping between two different notebook manuscripts. So it's all there in one document. Anyway, that, you know, after that, I think Rebecca had two questions about the script along the way, and that was all I knew. And then I just showed up on the night of the performance.
Yeah. Brent, what was your path from winning to showing up and seeing it?
So initially it was like, oh wow, now this is real. Okay, this was fun and now it's real. Like when your house is perfectly tidy for you and then suddenly company's coming over and you're like, oh, okay, now we got to really, you know, get it into gear. So yeah, I'm not a great notator. I did a combination of notating stuff myself, outsourcing some of it, and then outsourcing people to proofread it and tell me how much I don't know about it. So like it still was not in perfect shape. And I have to say, Rebecca, you know, we had a conversation where you just kind of looked through the score, told me stuff like, oh, I think you mean the sopranos in a soprano range and not Mariah Carey whistle range. So you're going to want to bring this an octave down. Stuff like that. And just making it clear for the actors, that was really helpful. And I think a lot of people would, Sam, you just mentioned this, like just doing some revisions that make you go, okay, now that I know human beings are going to see it in this form, now that I look back through the script, what do I suddenly see? And that's important because it really is a different mindset. And I think it's for me, a much more productive one. Not fear, but that certain adrenaline kick of like, this is happening. Now, Sam, you sort of mentioned like being able to hand it off finally was like you mentioned that in a positive light. I was like, so I forget the conversation, but I was like, so when am I going to come down and be there for every second of the day? And was like, oh, I am not required to be there. And at first I was like, but, and it ended up being so educational for me to see what the show was, not as, you know, something on a leash I was holding, but rather going off on its own and seeing if the word blueprint came up a lot. Is this a blueprint I can really hand off? And when I do, what happens? And so there were nerves about that. By the time the show was ready, I was just like, or rather by the time I was in town and it was the day of the show, I was just like, I'm ready for anything. And yeah, it was very exciting, a little nervous, but I feel like that's kind of any show you write, you know, opening night.
Yeah.
I do think that not being involved in the casting or the rehearsals did create some real white knuckle suspense. When I walked in and took my seat in the back, and it's like, okay, you know, is everybody going to look at me like, what were you thinking, man? Or is this going to work out? So,
yeah, for sure. I mean, Brent was our first, you know, first one. We did a development series one before, so it's technically our second performance as MusicalWriters.com doing these staged readings. And I've been doing this for years, so it wasn't my, you know, first show. But Brent was our first writer who had submitted a show. And I remember the email very, and he was like, okay, so when are rehearsals and when should I show up? And I tried to write back as diplomatically as possible.
And you nailed it, by the way.
I'll see you on opening night. Like I'll see you at the show. Because depending on where you are in your journey, you know, every other time that Brent had done his show, he was either the lead or directed it or both and was very hands-on. And when you are that hands-on in the reading of your show, then you definitely can ensure that everything goes exactly the way that you want it to. But at some point, you do have to turn over your baby. You do have to let it run, because not being at rehearsals really informs you as the writer what your script says, right? What your script says. And if we miss the mark completely, then you can take that feedback and look at it and go, okay, I need to clarify this here. That was not what I was going for. I would hope that the majority of the surprises are positive, right? Like, oh, wow, they made that so much better or so much funnier. But then when we're really on the wrong track, if an actor really reacts to something the wrong way, or the vibe is just off for a complete scene, then we've got to go back to the drawing board and figure out, you know, what needs to happen. And then every other show that you do, whether it's another reading, a fully produced show, is going to be informed by that. Before we move on, I do want to make sure, Sam's been great about dropping some answers in the chat, but I do want to answer the questions about submitting, script score, merged, all of that. So when you submit for Academy Reading Series for pitch night, I'm looking for full script and full score. That helps me answer the can I do this show part of it, right? You can have an amazing idea for a show, but if it wins and I want to pick it and you're like, oh, I don't have any of the music notated, well, I can't make it happen, right? So we're doing live music, live piano. I need notated scores because that's how my actors learn the music. That's how I play for it. In Michael's specific situation, he had lead sheets. I am perfectly capable of playing off of lead sheets. I just don't want to, because then I am making judgments on how I think the songs should sound or feel or go. So having a full piano vocal score really definitely makes sure that I'm not rewriting your show for you, that I'm not just making it sound the way that I want. Merged score, integrated score, those are the same thing. They're interchangeable. This is not a requirement to submit, and it's not a requirement to do your show, but it does make a difference to the performance. It does make a difference to the actors. So we are rehearsing for just 1 week, and my actors, most of them are using iPads for their script or their score, or they print it out. And the ability to just start from the beginning, one PDF with all of their lines, all of their music in one place without having to flip back and forth is invaluable, absolutely invaluable. I wish all shows came that way. It makes a difference. yes, my actors do like to see the piano part. They read music. They wouldn't be able to do this. They wouldn't be able to learn a whole show in a week if they didn't. They like to know what's happening in the breaks. They like to see that. It really does inform it. So that merge script score is huge to the success and making it easy on the actors, which
and real quick, on that note, Michael and I had a conversation on Musical Writers where I completely just went off on quite a long message about my little process for doing this, and I just thought I would copy paste that into a Word document, put it on Dropbox, and now it's in the chat. Just for like, if you don't know what system to use, here's the one that a lot of trial and error ultimately taught me.
Yeah, and honestly, there's not like a right or wrong way. As if it looks good to me at the end, if it makes sense, and if the songs are in the right place, and the score and the script's in the right place, and it's legible, I'm happy. Michael, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to add something about the lead up to performance. Unlike Brent, unlike Sam, I don't act in my shows, I don't direct my shows, but always in the past, I've been involved. I've experienced that collaboration where I'm told to be very quiet by the director, but I do watch the rehearsals. I do spot things that I might want to change in the script. And if I do have some notes, I will later talk to the director about them, which is also a wonderful process, totally different from this. What was so interesting about this, again, was overnight, seeing the whole thing come to life to a certain extent. It was profound and it was exhilarating. Fortunately, it felt good, but it was absolutely being thrown into the pool.
Yeah, it really, it is. I feel for y'all as writers, because it's definitely scary in a good way, I think, to turn it over and go, okay, let's see what's going to happen. Because it is your baby. It is what you've done. And, my intention is to honor it as much as I can, as true as I can. But also my bigger intention is that I want it to be a good performance, right? That's positive for everyone. We don't want anyone in the audience to have a bad experience, right? So if that means something needs to be edited, or, for the sake of that production, we're going to do it because we want everyone to leave with a positive experience of it. So any other comments about preparation?
And I will say, for me too, actually, the fact that I wasn't needed during that week of rehearsal was actually one of the reasons why I started. Because I have a wife in grad school and a 7-year-old son who I'm with every day. And I was like, there's no way if I got into some, festival out East or something that I could just drop everything and go. And so it was attractive to me to have something where I didn't have to be there in person. And in fact, in my case, I didn't even go down for the show. I watched a video afterwards. Rebecca and her team were kind enough to make one for me. And I do think what was really helpful to me about that I didn't anticipate going in was the understanding that this director, these actors are doing what I put in the script. And if I am not happy with what they did, that's my fault, right? I got to change something. Either it was unclear, or I didn't write what I actually wanted, or, it was, I feel like that would have been such a different experience if I'd been in the room during rehearsals. I've been for other projects where you're just like, oh, no, this is what I meant. Let's change that. And you sort of make those little tweaks in real time. But if you want your show to have any life outside of you being directly involved in it, in whatever local theater you're in, then it has to be clear enough that anybody can pick up the script and score and put it on. And it's exactly your show.
I think that's a great point. And I think it just also speaks to Rebecca's talent and sensitivity to the scripts, that I sat there and felt like I was never misunderstood.
Well, and that, yours was very clear. And that's, I think, when I'm looking at scripts to answer that, can I do this show? I need input. I don't need, with anything, I don't need, stage directions of, hey, you need to go, they need to go to center, they need to go to right. We're not doing that part of it. but I need to know how these actors feel. And then also, not only do I need to know, more than that, my actors need to know from the character description, from the stage directions that they have. We don't have enough rehearsal time for me to help them with that, right? I mean, we're just making it happen. So not only am I, as the director, informed by the script, my actors are informed by the script. That's where they're getting their character choices from. That's where they're getting their reactions from, is what's in the script. And that's more than just the dialogue, also in the music. And I think, you know, even though we're musical writers, we neglect that in the music a lot. You know, a lot of times I'll get a tempo marking, I might get a moderate, but I need also that this is angry or hesitantly. That helps my actors so much as well, be able to do what's in your head. I mean, you can't adjective us enough. We like them all.
Speaking of those details, which I'm getting better at in my own scores, for those who are asking about merged script scores, one of the key parts that I didn't fully understand until I got into the weeds with it was that if you're making a merged score, any dialogue that happens in the middle of a song, even if it's just a, oh, okay, and then they start singing again, any stage direction that happens in the middle of the song, any expression that you would put in the libretto, have to be in your score.
Otherwise, it has to.
Otherwise, they won't see it. If that's what they're using for the reading, if they're looking at the music, you can't just like stick it in the lyrics separately. And I think that brings up a point. It was I misunderstood when I was trying to merge mine, was that I created redundancies after my songs. I put in the sort of lyrics and dialogue as they would appear in a normal script afterwards, and then just kind of marked where like it cut off. And Rebecca told me afterwards, she's like, actually, like, let's do no redundancy. So like put everything in the song and then pick up in the script exactly right where that song ends. Because then as they're flipping through, it's all smooth sailing. And I think that's the main reason why to have a merged script, is it makes that rehearsal process and then the performance that much smoother and less noisy if they're using real paper.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you know, prepare to take a grueling, probably couple hours, just going back and forth between your libretto version and the score version. There were like 2 stage directions that just didn't make it to the score.
Yeah.
And then when I saw the reading, I was like, that's not what it says. And then I like afterward, I was like, that's what it says. Like, you know, like, so, or what it doesn't say.
Right.
So
I had one of those too.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, Kyle did a great job of asking a question that helps us segue into the next part. He asked, is there an audience? Yes, we do everything in front of an audience. And about feedback, is there feedback given? Everybody hates talkbacks. I think that's a general, writers and actors and audiences. Nobody likes talkbacks. I hate to break it to you if you like them, but nobody likes that. It's just a little bit too on the nose. We still do it. Producers still make us do it. Marketing teams still make us do it, but nobody likes them. Nobody likes that, being on the spot, answering questions in person. But we definitely do feedback for this. So that's what I want to segue into, is talk about how you got the feedback. So you get feedback in multiple different ways with these staged readings. You get the real in-person live audience feedback, right? So did they laugh when you wanted them to laugh? Did they clap and cheer when you wanted them to clap and cheer? Did they gasp or cry when you wanted those emotions to happen? So we got live real-time audience feedback. We also did audience surveys afterwards to answer questions, to give feedback. And I would say that for the most part, we get really good responses. The folks who are coming to these are excited about new musicals. They're excited about the development process. So they're usually very excited about giving their opinions and their feedback. So we get our cast feedback as well. So we do cast feedback, and if everybody can make sure their mics are muted. I'm trying to kind of catch them as I do. But we have cast feedback as well. And then I think a very good part of the feedback is the feedback from me as the director. We kind of do a post-mortem afterwards, after your show, and talk through it. And I give you all my uncensored feedback about your show, from logistics to themes to to all of it, things that we discovered in the rehearsal process, and all of that, and also hopefully help kind of navigate the feedback that you get from the audience and the cast. So let's talk about this part. Let's talk about the feedback and all of those aspects and what was good and painful and most profitable to you. Let's start with Brent on this one. Tell us about feedback.
So I completely agree that like one of the most important parts of the feedback is just the audience. And it's great if you can be there just because you can feel certain things. If people, you know, like lean back in their chair, start coughing or check their program, something is either wrong with that scene or something the scene before, you know, like just didn't have the momentum to get us where we need to be. But I highly recommend getting a video if possible. I decided to spring for like an actual videographer because I was like, you know, we've all seen the handy cam on the back row of a large theater kind of tape where you can't really hear and you can't really show anybody else. So like if there's any way to do a little extra TLC, even if it's, you know, it doesn't have to be fancy, doesn't have to be expensive, but just a way to really let you go back and watch it the way that a football coach might go back and watch the game again. And part of that is, you know, even though you'll have a sense of people in the room, everything's coming at you. All these choices that you didn't write, but the actors are making that are like, oh my God, that's so much. I got to make sure the script implies that because I really want that to be the delivery. Or, oh, wow, I didn't think of that. Like it's almost impossible to watch your show as a show that first time. But if you have a video, you can kind of eventually be like, you can experience it closer to what the audience experienced it like. And the only other thing I'll say is you have about 48 hours till people that saw it start to get foggy on what happened. You know, we're a culture where you can watch a different next Netflix movie every night. Meanwhile, you're binging an HBO Max show. How many things have they seen if you ask them a week later?
Right.
Now, to be fair, if you ask them a week later, that'll definitely tell you what was memorable. But they'll remember details if at all possible are able to get a friend to the show or to watch the video, that one friend that never blows smoke, even if they hurt your feelings a little, that's the friend. Because mom will tell you nice things and your partner will tell you nice things and that's their job. But see if you can put it in front of somebody that really, you know, is a tough love person. And yeah, get a video.
Get a video. Yeah, we will make sure for any Academy reading series that there is video proof, obviously, especially if you're not going to be able to be there. It depending on location, depending on access, all of that will depend on the quality of it, right? We do a lot of outdoor performances as well. And in those cases, we always make sure that we record the last inside run through so that you at least have one that really does sound good and is clear on that part. So there, it just depends. It depends on the location and depends on the situation, what that video is going to look like. Michael, do you want to tell us about your feedback and what was beneficial to you?
Yeah, sure. I think I was having a meltdown at the San Jose airport because I clearly wasn't going to make my connection in Denver when I got an email from Rebecca saying, you know, do you want to create some surveys for the audience and the cast, which was actually a nice distraction at that moment. And I'd never done anything like that before. And so she showed me what Brent had done and what Sam had done, and I stole from both of those because there were wonderful questions. I don't know which of you guys came up with the one to the cast member. If you had to fight to keep something in the show, what would it be? Boy, I love that question. Thought that was great. Thanks, Sam. But anyway, I put that together, and also I was mindful of the fact that my show is pretty farcical. You know, I don't think that you have to like drink 3 cups of coffee to follow it, but you do have to pay attention. And I wanted to make sure that it was clear to people. So I did add a few questions about, you know, were things in the plot fuzzy to you? That sort of stuff. And the survey for the audience and the survey for the cast were really a little bit different because you knew that the cast was going to have a lot more inside feeling about the show, having rehearsed it for a week. and asking them what they would cut, what they would fight for. That was really instrumental. Now, my feeling always is that everybody has an opinion. And, I can give my script or I can give my video to, 5 or 6 people, and they can all give me very, very articulate feedback, but I'm not necessarily going to follow any of it until I start to hear the common themes. If 3 people tell me, I didn't understand what was going on in that scene, I definitely know I have a problem. And in this case, I had about 11 people say, you should cut that song in the first act. So, I did. I mean, it was great to almost get such a unanimous wave of opinion and feel like, well, this is very obvious what I should do there. So that was a huge help. And the other thing that came up for me in my show is the female lead is fighting her way through her professional life, and she was getting hit on by practically every male character in the show. And what I quickly learned from audience and cast is that a little of that in this day and age goes a long way. That made me feel like a really old man, but I was able to correct it and kind of vary what was going on and, and bring it into the 2020s. So that was hugely helpful as well. And yeah, Brent is right. Sitting there with the audience around you and seeing how they're reacting to it. I mean, again, that's huge. And not only was I learning which jokes, which moments really did play, but I was seeing the cast pull things out of their hat that were remarkable and going, oh my God, there was a laugh there and I never even realized it. I mean, that was just fantastic.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I
Sam.
think, and I'll say for audience feedback, I ended up creating a Google Forms feedback form, one for performers and one for audience members. I think my one regret in that is that I was late to the game. I didn't actually get them sent to Rebecca until maybe the Monday after the show, or maybe the day of the show. It was like, because that week had just been insane for me and like I hadn't gotten it done. And I wish I had it and it could have been in people's inboxes like when they were in their seats.
Exactly.
And that way they know like as soon as they come. So just the timing of that. The question that Michael mentioned, I found that really, really helpful when I asked for my performers. I found their answers very enlightening. I asked them the two sides of the same coin. I was like, if the writer gave you a red pen and you could change anything in the show, what would you change? And then the second one was, if the writer gave someone else a red pen, what would you beg them to save in the show? And that, like, they had very strong opinions about that. And it told me a lot about how they felt. One of the other questions I asked my performers that was just like heartwarming to me, but also like gave me good information was, what was a moment performed by someone else that you loved in the show? And part of that is, I know like people hate to brag about themselves, but they love bragging about their friends. And so it really helped me to see like, ooh, like these moments were common themes of like, this really stood out as something great in the show. And I think that really helped me. So if anybody's doing a show like this, I have a couple of Google Forms I already have. I can share a template with you. You can reach me at sam@musicalwriters.com, and I'll share it. It's not perfect, like you could make your own, but if you want something to start with, you're welcome to reach out.
Definitely. And it does, I mean, and you have to think about people's attention spans when it comes to those surveys, right? The quick questions that they can answer quickly on, on their phone. We had tried to send them out as quickly as possible, either the same night of the performance or the first thing the next morning, so that it is fresh in their mind, that they remember. I love knowing, I think the question I always ask, and I think I have for decades, is what was your favorite part about the show? And that's not really what I'm asking. I'm asking what's memorable, right? Like, what do you remember? What's still stuck in your head? What song are you telling somebody about? What are you talking about on the way home from the show in the car? It's more about what's memorable, because it doesn't necessarily have to be their favorite part that they loved it, but it is what that was memorable to them as well.
Yeah. And real quick, some shows, okay, so my show, I'm trying to make something accessible to anyone, even though it's a Star Trek show. So the
Right.
question is like, do you, and in fact, Rebecca, you asked me this question during the pitch. Do you have to be, or somebody, did you have to be a Trekkie
Yeah.
to get it? And I've been trying to make sure that you don't. But, you know, if your show is such that it appeals to a certain kind of fandom or clearly a certain kind of person, then if you're doing a survey, feel free to ask the audience member, well, how familiar were you with this going in?
Right.
Because if a Trekkie loves my show, great. I want to know if the Trekkie's date stayed awake. And if they loved it and don't know anything about that, then that's in a way more important. And I think a lot of shows, whether it's Star Trek or whatever it is, whatever might bring a certain person in, you know, like their level of familiarity, the level of likelihood to enjoy it no matter what or not is important.
I
Yeah.
see
No,
you adding a musical number called The Trekkie's Date. You might want to think about that.
That'll be at my next cabaret night of songs.
No, that really had a ring. You know, Rebecca, there's a question in the chat that I would love to hear from you on, because I think it's a great one. Frank was wondering how much the performers depend or can be helped by demo versions of the songs. You know, I had done a podcast with a number of those songs done in demo form. I got the sense that was not listened to, that was not needed. You guys just started with your own canvas. Is that true?
Right. So I very rarely use any existing demos, mainly because things have changed usually by them. So if my actors are using demos with old lyrics, old keys, old anything, it really kind of throws them off more than it helps them. I make rehearsal tracks for all of our actors. I do one-on-one rehearsals with them for solo. So if we have to change keys of anything or make any edits, that they have their rehearsal tracks for them in their key with what they need for the performance. I listen to very few demos. I'm kind of anti-demo in the sense that I probably don't honor the time and effort and work and money that people put into their demos as much as someone else would, right? Because I can look at your music and I know exactly what it sounds like. I can sit at the piano, and I do. I mean, when I do one of these shows, the very first production of it happens at my house. It's a one-woman show, and I sing and play through the whole entire show. When I did that for Sam's show, I was actually at my store in Dallas, and it was like a Sunday afternoon at 3:00, and I was literally in tears crying at the end of it from my own performance of it, because it was just so lovely, and it was so, you know, wrapped up so nicely at the end. So I'm not usually swayed by demos, and the actors, yes, they use them and yes, they don't. Like Brent had some really good, you know, tracks of his, but things had changed since then. So it wasn't like they could use it as any type of blueprint or anything. I mean, it had all changed since then. So if I'm ever questioning how a song should feel or the style, and I'm not getting that from the music, sometimes I'll go check a demo and just make sure I'm on the same page. Or if I think like the tempo marking's really odd or off, I'll either ask or I'll, you know, go check. But we really don't depend on anything but the script and the score. And that is why it's just imperative in all caps, is that the script and score is informing everything that I do and everything that the actors do. I mean, that is it. You know, if something was to happen to any of you, that's all we would have left, right? We wouldn't be able to ask. I do ask when I have questions. That's the privilege of working with writers that are still with us and who have email, is that if I do have a question, I'm going to ask. You know, that for sure is going to happen. Any other comments about feedback? Yeah, Sam?
I think that's an important distinction between putting on an established show like a Disney show or whatever versus working on a new show development. Is, you know, like at my local Muni theater here, they're doing Newsies this summer. If I was in Newsies, I'd get the soundtrack, I'd have it going in my car wherever I was going. I'd just immerse myself in the music, and it'd be a lot of fun. And of course, I'd skip to all the songs that I was singing if I were performing.
Right.
With a new musical development, you don't necessarily have that luxury because,
right,
as Rebecca's saying, things change, and also maybe the sound quality is not great, you know, unless they're like a music producer.
Yeah.
So it needs to be on the page.
It needs to be on the page. I mean, and I want that, because And that's why I love New Musicals over doing the shows that we're all doing, is because I find that even my actors, I mean, if, you know, the shows that have just announced their closing, Dear Evan Hansen, Come From Away, I love it. We're about to see a lot of regional theaters doing it. And everyone is going to come in and they're going to audition and they're going to sound like the cast album. That's what they're going to sound like. And that's their, you know, it's hard for actors to make something their own when all they've ever heard is another, you know, rendition of it. So I like to start them fresh, you know, without the Broadway cast albums or soundtracks or any of those things as well.
Yeah.
And Graham's right. Even Broadway cast recordings are different from the final versions. They don't always stay the same.
Before we move on, I will just say to the audience writ large, like, the most valuable feedback was sitting down with Rebecca for 2.5 hours, you know, a week or two after the show, because I had to take time to actually watch the video before we talked. But that was being able to sit down with someone who spent an entire week with your show, has seen all of the pitfalls and beautiful moments and things that are working and not working, and just go through song by song. This was great here. This was a challenge for us, and here's why. This sounds great, but it's really confusing on stage. You know, things like that you are so helpful, far and beyond like the, oh, I liked this, or oh, like I enjoyed that show. It really gives you a depth of insight you can actually do something with. And so if you have a chance, she's your gal.
Sam, thanks for bringing that up, because it was absolutely true. And Rebecca was just also incredibly generous with her time. You know, I mean, I really was like you. It was a 2.5 hour session. It was enlightening and encouraging, pretty much everything you would hope for a feedback session like that. And it really helped me kick out my subsequent draft based upon a lot of her insights.
Which I did read. I just haven't given you a feedback on yet. I did read your new draft. It's very
I wasn't nudging. I'm off the clock. I wasn't nudging.
No, and I think Brent said it probably the best when we were talking about his show, his postmortem. He was like, I think you probably know my show better than anyone but me. And I really do. I mean, by the time you know, for all of these shows, obviously I've studied it enough to allow you to pitch it. I do a table read for all shows. Even if I know I'm going to do it, I do a table read because I want to cast it adequately, right? And not always based on your cast descriptions or your character descriptions. So I've got to hear it out loud. And so normally I have feedback after that first table read. And so I've heard it with voices then, working on it for a whole week. And then a lot of my postmortem is wanting to justify any changes or reasons that I did stuff. I don't want you to think I'm just crazy, but at least letting you know, like, hey, the reason we cut this, or the reason that we did this was this, or the reason that I decided to make this person sing it, or the, you know, is to try to kind of explain my reasoning between those things. And then hopefully help clarify the feedback that you're getting from the audience and the cast as well, just so that it doesn't just come out of complete, you know, left field as well. Okay, any other questions about feedback? I'm kind of guessing. Okay, I'll answer that after. Great. Okay, cool. Well, then let's talk about our last thing that I have on my agenda. I think it's the last thing on my agenda, is about the highlight reels that you all made. So we filmed everybody's show, and you all took that content and have utilized it in different ways. So I want to hear from you about how that happened, how you did it, how you decided to cut your 2-hour show down to 3, 4, 5 minutes, and how you're utilizing that content to get your show to the next step. So who wants to chat about that first?
I can. So I am very into the idea of having a record of a show that is as watchable as possible, because it's not just for you, but anyone you want to show that wasn't there. If it's hard to hear, it's already a lot to ask somebody to watch a show on video for up to 2 hours. But, you know, so like I sprung for the actors to have body mics and for that to be connected into the soundboard. And like, that's a lot. That's not what everybody wants to do. But even if it's a matter of
And not always an option. Yeah.
Right. Well, fair. And it's even if it's like you've got a camera in the back and you've got your phone doing a voice memo on the front row, and you can get somebody who edits on Fiverr.com or something like that to just assemble it for you. But to me, it's also about promotion, and it's about, as you move forward, how, you know, you can pitch your show with words, but if you have footage of it going well, or footage that just gives a flavor of it, that speaks, like, that just has so much more information in it than you know, per second, than speech. And while I'm talking about this, I've got links to my latest trailer, as well as the full Musical Writers reading of Con, which can give you a good idea of what you'd be getting into if one of your shows had a reading. But I'll just say this about editing your trailer or your teaser or a highlight reel. You know, I found the magic number was 3, as in 3 minutes, and I mean max. So I actually made a 20-minute highlight reel, not because I thought anybody would want to watch that, but just to be like, what are my favorite 20 minutes? And then I showed like a few people, a few kind souls, and they were like, okay, you don't need any of this, you don't need any of that, and found a way to cut it down. But a lot of times the challenge is finding things that don't need a lot of context. Sometimes a joke has been set up for the whole show. So if you just show that one clip, the viewer of the video doesn't know why it's funny. All they know is the audience is laughing. And that's good to hear the audience laughing. But if at all possible, it's like, is there a joke that sets itself up and pays itself off? Or 30 seconds of a song that you don't need to know the context. It's just beautiful. It's just moving. It's not easy. But you know, I will say, if you've just got a video of the show, editing's not that hard. Most computers come with some basic, Macs come with iMovie, Windows comes with Windows Movie Maker. Go on YouTube, take a you know, 20-minute course on how to edit, because it's just slicing and moving puzzle pieces around. And once you get good at it, you don't have to rely on somebody else and pay them. I never edited video till I was in my mid-20s. I didn't grow up doing it. You can do it, and you'll have so much more control and finesse if you're not having to ask somebody to make your changes and hope they understand what you're saying.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to jump in here. First, I'm going to ask, someone's playing music very loudly in my neighborhood. Can you all hear it? No. Okay, perfect. Okay. I was going to put headphones in and up on the mic. All right. So I think one of the things that surprised me, I loved being able to watch the entire show, but in terms of other people, making a highlight reel is going to be far more valuable to you than having a video of the entire reading. Basically, the reading is for you and like maybe people who are close to you who might be interested to see what you're doing. Otherwise, you're probably never going to use it again. Like, honestly. If it were maybe like a professional recording or professional production, great. Maybe that would be like a big thing. But the highlight reel is useful because boiling it down to that really short thing is something that's watchable. It tells people a little bit about what your show is about, and it can get them excited to see more if there's something local that they can see. I think for me, I found it very challenging to cut that much material. Basically, I went through and I kind of cut out my favorite moments, and I was like, all right, let's see where we are time-wise. And it was 15 minutes. And I was like, dang it. and that is my show, which is 45 minutes long because it's a kid's show. So, you know, I clipped 2/3 of it away. So it's really hard to narrow that down. One of the things that I did for mine, because it's a kid's show, because it's a book that is a known property, at least for certain parents and teachers, they're going to be familiar with it. I wanted to make sure people knew that's what it was, that it was that thing, and tell a little bit about the story. And so I had clips from different characters throughout and just a little bit of text running across the screen, like a trailer for a movie, to give us this really basic outline for what's happening, what's this adventure that he goes on. And because there's no sets or costumes, you need a little bit of description. Mine did not have obvious Star Trek characters on it. So I needed something to note that they were animals in the jungle, and that was not immediately obvious. So I had to put that in the labels. But I think Brent is absolutely right. If you've never done video editing before, it is very possible. It's not necessarily going to be this big flashy thing that you would be like, oh yeah, I'm going to look that up on IMDb and watch this trailer because it's so professional. But it's functional for what it needs to be. For me, one of the things that I did to help address the challenge of being a fixed camera, because I did not spring for extra stuff. And so it was just, they had a set camera in the back, good quality audio, linked those up, and that was my video. So I felt like it would be difficult to sit there and watch a stationary camera. The nice thing is on something like iMovie, and I imagine Windows, you can do this as well, is there are some cropping and Ken Burns features and things like that that sort of mimic camera movement, even though obviously the camera's not moving. And so I added
zooming in.
Right. I added a little bit of that, like slow zoom or slow zoom out, or things to give a little bit more motion and activity so you didn't get completely bored by it. But all in all, the actual editing process was relatively simple technically once I decided what I actually wanted to include.
For sure. Michael, how did you make your reel?
Well, you and I had our post-mortem before I ever saw any video. And one of the things I remember you saying was a producer who hears that kind of laughter is going to want to learn more about the show. So
100%.
Just sort of a mantra for me. Now, one of the things I noticed was that the moments that I remembered from the live performance were not always the ones that I felt really popped in the video. Sometimes a line got swallowed, or just didn't get picked up quite right by the microphone. For whatever reason, it wasn't always, it wasn't necessarily going to translate. And I had to immediately let go of the notion that, oh yeah, I'm going to use those things. What I did was I sat down and I watched the entire video. It is, like Sam, I had a static camera. And I was just trying to notice what are the moments that looked fun to me, that looked alive. What were moments that could give a flavor, give a sense of the music. And I just kept marking down for myself. My show was like 2 hours. So I just kept marking down along the way. Okay, at 30 minutes and 54 seconds, good laugh right there.
Yeah.
Spent a little time thinking about it. And then I dumped the entire thing into iMovie. Now I'm not working high tech here. I have a fairly old iMac, and it was an old version of iMovie. So overnight, I just had to let the thing port over into iMovie and then playing with it. And I tried to find what Sam was using, which was that Ken Burns movement. I could not, but I did find that, yes, you can crop video the same way that you crop a photograph. But what happens is that you can suddenly make it seem like it's two different camera angles or two different scenes.
Yeah.
And you can literally do a close crop of the left side of the screen for these two characters talking, then cut to, it's the same sequence, but now you're doing a close-up of the right side, and it feels like movement. And that was incredibly, incredibly helpful. And in fact, I went through, I didn't really want to post the entire thing at first because I feel like, oh, it's really hard to watch a video of a staged reading. But I went through and just did that kind of massaging with the cropping. And then I put together the highlight reel just sort of based on laughs and musical numbers that I thought would play, and then kind of a little bit of wise ass subtitles along the way, just trying to sort of sell the show. And I'll put it in the chat as well. I ended up posting on YouTube a highlight reel, and then just 2 musical numbers intact that I really enjoyed.
I really like that you did that, Michael, as well. You know, as any buzz happens about your show, I mean, they're gonna, you know, if someone is gonna want to go see what you've got out there. I think we all agree that very, very few people, maybe 11 people in the entire universe, will want to watch your entire show from beginning to end. And that's not because it's bad. It's not, has nothing to do with the quality. It just, we just are kind of zoomed out, and we're kind of, you know, that's not what people want to do. But they do want the bite-sized chunks. They want the highlights. They like to watch those full numbers, especially if you've got standalone numbers that you can pull out that somebody can enjoy without having seen the whole show. That's great, great content that you can put out there to get people excited about your show, and get that buzz going. Agree with Michael about anything that you can do that has the audience laughing. Even if a producer does not care about your subject matter, or care about your story, or care about anything, it's hard to not pay attention to something where clearly the audience is having a good time. I mean, that usually translates to butts in seats at some point down the road. So anything you can do to let the person watching it that, hey, this audience was having an awesome time with this show. And if your show is a sad show and you're not going to have a bunch of laughter, then it's just the standing ovation at the end. If that's what people need to see and go, hey, this was a really successful event. Great. Thank you all so much for dropping those links in there. For those of you who are watching us, I would save those links, or you can actually export the whole chat so that you have them after we're done as well. So as we're kind of wrapping things up, and then we'll ask for questions, tell me where your show is now. What has happened with it? What's next for it? Where are you in your development process since you had your staged reading? Sam, tell me what's going on with it.
Well, I've had my attention pulled many different ways.
Right.
So I think confession time, not a lot has changed with my show since my staged reading. But I will say there's a couple of things that were really helpful to me afterwards that are helping me know how to think about the future. I think the first one was, because mine is a children's show, one of the things that Rebecca helped me to understand in our call afterwards was that for theater for young audiences, it's pretty much standard to use performance tracks.
Yep.
And not use live orchestration. And that made a huge difference for me in terms of what kinds of materials I'm thinking about preparing long-term, if I'm actually looking towards a real production. And so that was really helpful, because I don't feel competent as an orchestrator, but I feel like I could feasibly put together decent performance tracks on my own without shelling out thousands of dollars to somebody else. So that was a really helpful thing. Musically, I know that one of the things I want to change based on the reading is I want music faster. I had a narrator start the show, and it took me a while to get the first song, and I realized this is a musical, and I'm literally upsetting people's expectations in the first 2 minutes by not giving them a song, and they're going to be mad at me for the rest of the show. And maybe I'll win them back, that'd be great, but I prefer for them not to be upset in those first 2 minutes. And so I realized I needed to restructure that beginning. And that's really the main big piece of like editing. And as far as next steps, my hope, once I have those things in place, is to make an attempt to actually pitch it to children's theaters and see if I can get any traction there. And if nothing else, pursue something local here in Springfield, and we have a great community theater scene. I feel like the next time it's on stage will be a great opportunity to really see like the show kind of come into its own, because I feel like it's like it feels very close, but some of those little tweaks are really going to make the difference.
Well, I think the biggest thing with the next production of yours is incorporating, since pretty much all of the characters are animals, incorporating that I think is going to be huge. that was obviously not an aspect of ours of, okay, oh, that's an elephant, that's a sloth, that's a, that we don't know who the animals are. I think that's going to really clarify a lot of stuff as well. Christina, Sam's show was it February?
March. It was scheduled for
March.
February, got pushed back to March.
Got put back to March. Michael's was just 2 months ago, and Brent's was back for Halloween. We did
Halloween,
it for
yeah.
Halloween because it was a really fun one. Everybody, we actually had people dress up in the audience as well. It was really cool. Michael, where you've done I would say a medium rewrite of your show. It wasn't extensive since then, but it's a medium rewrite. So what else has happened for your show since you're reading?
Well, there's a theater here in San Luis Obispo County, California, and they've done a few of my other shows, and they were not initially interested in foodies until they saw the highlight reel. So they are going to do, and they're not giving me a full production, but they're going to do a 3-performance staged reading in November. So we're kind of starting to work on the cast for that now. And some of the folks who were involved in the podcast that I did are going to be in that performance. So I'm looking forward to that. Otherwise, I'm just trying to market it, and I hate that process. It gives me no joy. But I honestly have a reminder on my phone that goes off every night at 8 p.m. saying 30 minutes of marketing. And I will sit down and send off a couple of cold emails, and I'm just trying to get the word out there. But so there will be that production in November. And, hopefully I'll grab some other video or recording of that I can incorporate as well. And the one other thing that I want to do sometime soon, once I feel like I'm locking the script, is build a website for it. I mean, I kind of build a website for myself because I have a few different productions, but I sort of want to have that in place.
Yeah. So it's been the longest since Brent. Brent, tell us what's happening with your show since you're reading in October.
Well, editing a video of your show is not just good for making marketing materials. It also forces you to just sit there and absorb it a lot. And I rewrote a lot and saw little things. If you're writing a comedy, sometimes you have 2 little jokes in a row and you realize the first one kills. You gotta just say goodbye to the second one, even though you think it's funny. Like, you already laughed, dude. Like, the second one can go. So a fair amount of rewriting, a little bit of clarifying, cutting, adding some song material. In my case, the opener and the 11 o'clock number both continue to be concern points. And you want to make sure those are solid. But what was good for me, aside from just the educational learning what was working and what wasn't, is I thought for a long time that I shouldn't apply to a lot of development opportunities because, nobody's going to take my show seriously. And I just kind of saw the musical writers thing and I was like, you know what? I'm going to try. I'm going to give this a real shot. But after that, I started applying for everything. And now Con is being produced. The first act of it is being produced at the Florida Festival of New Musicals. And I also got picked up by a residency program at the Players Theater in New York. So it's going to have a little off-Broadway run. Not like when you hear off-Broadway, it's not that, but still having your show done for a couple of weeks in an off-Broadway theater is a real thing. And it only happened because I looked at every development opportunity on MusicalWriters.com. There are other websites with calendars of them. It sucks at first because they ask for all these arbitrary things. One asked how many scenes in the first act? How many scenes in the second act? It was read the script. Anyway, but eventually, if you make a writer bio, you have a writer bio. You make 100-page synopsis, now you have one. And it gets easier and easier to copy paste. And just a couple hours a week of doing that, take advantage of these opportunities, because I wouldn't really know what to do next with the show if I hadn't applied to, I think honestly, I got 2 opportunities after Musical Writers, and I probably applied to honestly, maybe 100 things. Some of them I probably wasn't right for, but you just never know.
Yeah, for sure. I really think that is a huge encouragement to everyone. You've got to submit. And we really only have two choices with our shows, and that's either to produce them ourselves or have somebody else produce them. I'm always going to push you to have the latter. Use somebody else's money, use somebody else's resources, use somebody else's time and energy. But you've got to get it out there for them to do it. Christina has a good question. How much experience did each of you have as musical writers before your readings? Brent, I know, did a show here in Dallas previously. How many other shows are under your belt?
Yeah, so I'm in a strange case because I did community theater in Dallas all growing up. I wrote shows in high school, and then I actually did a program at NYU for musical theater writers and had like a small 3-week off-Broadway show that was a spectacular flop in 2010. And then I didn't do it for a while and came back to it. So in my case, it's this combination of a lot of experience, but super rusty. But yeah, like probably participated in one way or another in the writing of like 6 shows before this one.
Awesome. Michael, how many musicals have you written?
I guess 1.5 before Foodies. I had written a review, a collection of sketches and 5 songs, and that was about parenting. It was called "We're Canceling Cable and Other Empty Threats," and the songs played. So then I tried my hand at writing a full-length musical. That very much a family show about it was based on a true story that happened in our area here about a lost dog and various people fighting over who got to claim it and own it. And but I didn't have a composer, and I was able to find one on Craigslist. And so that was the first full musical that I wrote, and Foodies is the second.
Yeah. Sam, what's your musical writing experience?
I wrote most of my first musical in high school as therapy when I moved countries and was lonely and needed something to do. And then I wrote, it was kind of a 1-act opera in college, which was sort of a blend between musical theater and opera. And then I started writing another show after college when I was married and working, which is still kind of in process. It's one of those things that I'm like, maybe I'll go back and revisit it. And then it was really in the last year that I kind of dug back into writing. I wrote a short little 10-minute musical based on one of my favorite books to read with my son. And then after I did that and I had so much fun doing it, I was like, oh, I want to do more of this and maybe next time not do a copyrighted book. And so I went looking and found My Father's Dragon, and I had just read it with my son, and it was like, oh, that would be a great one. So it's one of those things where I think My Father's Dragon is really the first actual complete show that I've written, but I've sort of been doing pieces of it since high school. And I think one of the things that has always drawn me to musical writing that's very different from songwriting is I loved thinking holistically and then in the tiny detail, and being able to go back and forth between putting scenes together and then the nitty-gritty of lyrics, and then thinking visually what's going on stage, thinking these people need to change costumes, so I need to have something here. All of that it was fascinating to my brain to do all those different things. And so I feel like it's really been in the last year or two where I've sort of accepted, like, this is the artistic niche that I really love to do.
Yeah. Awesome. Anybody else have any questions of our lovely gentleman here or of myself, either about the Academy Reading Series, pitch night, highlight reels, any of those things? Feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the bucket down there. Anything at all? Anything at all?
I've been hearing something about, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
Armand. Just a quick question about the chat. You said something about we're going to be able to get a copy of the chat box and all the questions, and especially all the links. I'd like to take time to check out all those links, and I'm not sure how to get a hold of that chat box.
So at the very bottom where it has the chat screen, there's a little like paper thing that you can click on, and you can save the chat to your computer. I think it probably looks different on everyone's. It says save chat. There's the 3 little dots, and then it says save chat, and you can, it'll save that for you. And then you'll have all of those links. They won't disappear on you. All right. Wayne Morris confirming you can do a full 2-hour show with intermission. Yes, I can. I did for Brent. I did for Michael. I didn't for Sam because he only gave me 45 minutes. But yes, we do full shows. If there was another question about how many performances do we do, usually just one. That's about usually all I can get a space for. With Sam's, we did 2 performances of it. One that was family friendly where people were allowed to bring their kids. But because kids are noisy, we did another one where there were no kids. So that's the one that we filmed. So we did 2 productions of that. But yes, normally just one performance. And it's super fun because everyone, I know the writers are white knuckling the audience participation, but my actors are literally white knuckling their stands because there's sometimes that we've not run the whole show from beginning to end in its entirety before the performance. We've done all the pieces and then it's putting it together, but because of people's availability for rehearsals, you know, we've had to deal with those things as well. Christina has questions about the rights. Say, Michael?
My God, now you tell us.
I know, right? No, it happens, but I think it makes for the best performance because they are all in. They are at peak, ready to go and to make it happen.
And the actors who haven't seen certain parts that the other actors do, watching them react was my favorite thing. Because when the other actors are laughing or you can see them feeling feelings, it tells you a lot with in a short space of time on a video.
Yeah, with Brent's show, we did pull a pretty big prank on the entire cast. There is a dance number. Normally our shows have no choreography, no dancing, because we don't have time, right? But this duo of mine who is just so generous with their time, we actually did late night tap dance rehearsals after everyone had left. So nobody but me and the actors knew that they were going to be actually performing a tap routine in the middle of the show. And while it was surprising for the audience, it was even more surprising for the rest of the cast. And that will go down as probably one of the best moments of our shows for sure. For sure. Larry sent me a message about these actors are local from Dallas, and do you do the casting yourself? Yes, I cast all the actors, and I do all my shows in Dallas just because that's where my resources are. It's where I can do your shows very affordably with some of the best talent that I think the world has to offer. I'm open to doing shows in other locales, and I love having those conversations, but we have to overcome the roadblocks, right? So here's where I have space and resources and availability and knowledge of what these actors can do. When I'm put in a different location, I definitely can do that as well. We just have to figure out how to navigate the gap there. The question about where are the performances held, it changes for literally every single performance. With Brent's, we were able to use a theater that was dark that weekend, and that's what allowed us to be able to have microphones for that one. For Sam's, I actually was able to use a space at one of our most popular children's theaters, which was really excited to make that connection for him. For Michael's, I actually had an art gallery in our mall invite us to do it there. It was lovely. We were surrounded by $28,000 Picasso paintings, which I didn't even know you could go see in a mall in Dallas. So I try to pick locations that are fun and interesting. We do a lot of things poolside as well in the summer. And your show could happen with folks floating in the pool while they're watching it. So we do them in a lot of different places. I don't think we have enough time to answer all of the details about Con and My Father's Dragon with rights and all of that. But feel free to reach out to them directly about that, or we'll chat about it in our Academy group as well. Are there any other quick questions before we wrap this up from anyone? Y'all have been such an awesome audience. I just can't thank you enough. for dropping questions in the chat. We'll try to get to them all. We did record this. We'll get it uploaded for folks to see and watch back later at another time. Steven's excited to be going to Dallas. Yes, we're excited about the festival this summer. It's still, there's still time to register. If you'd like a coupon code to save some money, let me know. But July 15th and 16th, we are doing another staged reading of one of our members' shows, Little Things by Dave Smith. We'll be doing that on Saturday night. On Friday night, we're doing a New Works Cabaret. I'll actually be doing a song from all of these gentlemen from their shows on that new, as kind of like a, this is what we've done and this is what we're gonna do, and do some of those exciting things for that. Justin's gonna be there. I'm really excited to meet y'all in person, especially after a full year of seeing your faces on Zoom. I think that's going to be really exciting. You can reach out to me, Rebecca, at musicalwriters.com with other questions, with clarification, feedback. Look at the emails for information about our next pitch night. If you're not an Academy member, if you've joined us tonight and you enjoyed the information that you got, please look at our membership. It's only $29 a month. You get monthly classes like this where we talk and chat. We have the group lobby where everyone has the opportunity to ask questions and tell us what's going on with their shows, and more and more and more. So many things that make this a great community, and it's for everyone. Whether you've never written a show before, or you've written your first song, or you have 7 shows under your belt, this is the place for you. All righty, thank you, Brent. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Sam. I hope y'all have a brilliant weekend. Stay cool here. It's going to be 102 degrees in Dallas this weekend, so I don't know if you're that excited to come join us, but we're staying cool. Thank y'all all so much. Have a great night. See y'all later.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, everybody.